Welcome back to Director's Playbook, the podcast where we help funeral home leaders build long-term success through practical insight, great conversations, and lessons from real experience. Today, I'm excited to sit down with someone who wears a lot of hats in this profession: funeral director, funeral home owner of the Bailey Family Funeral Homes in Connecticut, and one of the voices behind the Graveyard Shift podcast, Matt Bailey. Matt, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you.
Well, we're honored to have you. Thank you for being here. I guess, do we need to check your podcast contract or anything with the Graveyard Shift?
I don't think so. We're up for negotiations for season 2 coming up, so we'll probably come into play.
You know, Graveyard Shift is my second favorite podcast, I must say. But no, you guys do a great job on that show, and I know you spend a lot of time on that and bring some great content. And what I like most about it is I always get a good chuckle, and I get to learn something at the same time.
We have a lot of fun. We definitely do. So
I love it. Well, shout out to the Graveyard Shift for allowing you to moonlight a little bit on another podcast.
I didn't tell them. I don't know if they know. But,
okay, it's our secret. It's our secret. No one will know. Hey, well, do us a favor. Most of our audience is familiar with you and your business and some of your background. Would you give yourself a little bit of a proper introduction? That'd be helpful.
Sure. I'm a multi-generation funeral director. I don't say that because I think it makes one inherently better. Sometimes I think it's more to the contrary. I just think it's more interesting. I'm a 6th generation funeral director, so we've had 4 generations here in Connecticut. And before that, we had 2 generations under the Williams name, which was a great grandfather's maternal grandparents and all that. I went to work with my dad right after college. I studied at Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., was studying politics. I was not sure what I was going to do. My siblings both went off in different directions. My brother went into law enforcement. My sister's a social worker in private practice. So my dad had a real no succession plan, and I went to work with him one summer, and I had what Doug Manning would call one of those power of presence moments where we showed up to a house on a first call, and I just saw the chaos calm and the entire atmosphere of the family settle. And as they said, "It's okay, Mr. Bailey's here." And it was, I think, the first time I saw the power of what our family's work in our community has been for, a number of generations. And I realized how special it was and decided to be a part of it. So I went to...
And you've been hooked ever since, I guess.
Yeah. I went to AMI in New York City. So I got to live in the Big Apple for a year, which was a great experience. I think, everyone should do it for at least a year. I was ready to go home by the time I was done. And then, we've expanded a few times through either growth or acquisition or establishing firms. But I've got a great team here in Connecticut, and I enjoy learning from others in the profession. I really try to be intentional about keeping a growth mindset and realizing that I don't have all the answers and learning. Even if I'm training or presenting myself, I always take something away from the room from somebody else. So I think we all have the ability to be better when we work together across the profession. So.
Oh, well said. I could not agree more. And so, obviously, it's important for any business to work to stay relevant, and never been more important than today in the funeral space. And so I thought we'd talk a little bit about how your funeral home and your business is working to stay relevant in the 21st century here. We battle with the changing funeral consumer and technology and all these different things. So what comes to mind when you think about staying relevant these days?
For me, it comes down to providing and doing those things that funeral service has always done and that are fundamental to the innate needs of human beings who experience loss, but doing it within the contemporary culture and context that we find ourselves operating. So, whether it's now or the Dark Ages or the dawn of civilization or 1,000 years from now, there's death and loss. And when people encounter that, I believe that there are certain things that they need. They need to accept that reality of the change. They need to be surrounded by people who care about them. They need to take moments to pause with intention and honor a life that was well lived, and to have ceremony and commemorate that into market. Now, the way that society looks today is different than 100 years ago and different than 500 years ago. but the needs are the same. So I think the challenge for us is looking at the contemporary consumer and finding out how we talk to them and how we educate them about those needs, make them realize that we are not the first generation in humanity that somehow miraculously does not need them. So when someone talks about direct disposition or says mom outlived all of her friends, well, let's talk about that. How does that look for you? What are you going to need? What are other people going to need? Who else is involved in this situation and scenario? And we just live in a very diverse society now where we'll have people who are here, from different cultures, from different countries where they handle things differently. I mean, over the course of a week, I'm going to have a service for a very proud Irish woman who wants her Catholic roots there. And we're going to have someone from Greece, and the Orthodox Greek Church is paramount to them. We just had a Chinese funeral where, their rituals were very traditional and from their native country. We had another family who's only, they've been here now probably for 50 years, but still have strong roots in Puerto Rico, and culturally it impacts, their family and how they handle things. But they're also very much, assimilated in the community in which they live. So it's different with everyone. So it's really a matter of us being able to listen and I think educate ourselves so we have a real toolbox that we have to work with it when the family comes in, and to humble ourselves that if we don't know what they need, to ask them and talk about it and say, how could we best serve you and how could we help?
Yeah, that's so good. I really like that. You're probably too young to remember the BlackBerry days, or I don't know if you probably didn't ever have a BlackBerry, did you?
I wish I was, but no, I remember
Did you
them
have
quite
one?
well. I myself have one in a drawer behind me here.
Oh, I'm telling you, that was my favorite smartphone ever. And they
One
used
day
to call it.
they're gonna bring back the keyboard. You watch.
I hope
It's
so.
gonna all things old are made new again. So I had was
Uh,
a Vizio or a Viso, or I can't remember what the other ones were used to be called that I had for a period of time. The stylus you'd have to pull out and
yeah. Well, I liked the keyboard, obviously, and of course, it incorporated email and those things, which were revolutionary back in the day, right? And they even called it Crackberry, I think,
mhm,
because you're just addicted to your phone back in the day. But it's interesting. They became irrelevant at some point because no one carries a BlackBerry today that I know of. And there's lots of other examples of that when you think about, I don't know, your Blockbuster maybe, or something along those lines, or Kodak. Businesses that were thriving and successful and then no longer really relevant. It just makes you wonder, what they did, because they, at one point those were pinnacle businesses that were very profitable and they were growing, but at some point they took a misstep and now they're no longer relevant. So I'm not saying it's going to happen with the funeral, but I hear things from time to time, whether it be, from a church situation where the family just wants to go everything through the church and the funeral just does what's required by law.
mhm.
And so they miss out on a lot of it. So they're basically being disrupted in a lot of ways from different areas. Have you given any thought at some of that?
Yeah, well, I think the examples you bring up of, the blockbusters, and I mean, look at the trajectory of it, right? I mean, I remember we had an independent video store in town, and then it was the chains that came in, and then the chains were disrupted by Netflix through the mail, and then there was Redbox outside of the pharmacy, and then it was digital streaming. Fundamentally, at the end of the day, people still want to watch a movie or they want to watch a show. That never changed. I think what was there was the arrogance of companies that were so big and successful that they thought no one will ever, question us. We live in a world where someday, as prominent and as big and as influential as it is, something's going to happen to Amazon. It's going to go away. Someone's going to defeat it. Something else will happen. Um, and it can happen to funeral service if we're not paying attention and listening to our customers. Just because, people switched from driving to their local Blockbuster to clicking download on a smart TV never changed the fact that they want to watch a movie. I mean, and that goes back to what I said about the fundamental needs of humans in grief. So for us, we just can't be so arrogant to think that, we don't have to adapt to change. And that's not to say that we don't necessarily know better. And I don't want that to come across in the wrong way, but we
Right.
work in this space. we're the experts. We're called director for a reason, and it's our responsibility to guide people. So they don't know what they don't know. And they may come in and say, well, it's going to be too hard to see her because she was sick and I don't want to remember her that way. And that's where we, as the expert, have to come in and say, well, the way you're remembering her is hooked up to tubes and in a hospital with a respirator and a roommate next door who was screaming, and the nurse who was, coming in and out every 2 minutes, and she was gasping. That's the last picture you want, as opposed to us giving her a bath and doing her hair and putting some nail polish on her and dressing her and giving her some of her dignity back, and having your last memory picture walking in and seeing she's at peace. I had a family that walked out of a cremation identification viewing and they changed their mind and said, we want to have a viewing and a visitation because so many people came to the hospital and saw her. We never thought she would look this beautiful.
Yeah.
And we have to guide people in those conversations. We don't force them. I mean, if at the end of the day, it's up to them. They're the customer, they're the client, but we have a fiduciary responsibility to educate them. And if we say, I've been doing this for X number of years, I've walked with a lot of families, and what I hear from a lot of people and what I've learned is, and then you fill in the blank, they may think about things differently. And that's the challenge is, again, having your toolbox and, having your language ready so you know how to have those conversations with families, and hopefully guide them not towards more stuff or more merchandise, but towards a healing experience where they find value in it so they come back to you in the future and trust you.
Yeah, and I like what you said as far as listening to your customers, but also educating them, and we're giving them alternatives so they can make an informed decision. And in that conversation, you're all along the way, you're creating value for them that they may not have even appreciated before they talked with you,
Right.
right?
I'm a firm believer that people know more of what they do not want than what they do want. And
Yeah,
if they haven't been to church in 20 years and they're not religious, and the last 5 funerals they've been to were in churches and it doesn't speak to them, they're going to walk in and say, well, I don't want a funeral, just cremate her. And,
yeah,
so we have to be ready to tell them what's possible and say, well, okay, well, what if we do something different? And let me paint a picture for you of what that might look like. We gather your family together and we collect the stories and we put together a service that tells the story of your dad's life and what made him so special. And we honor his military service, and we talk about all of his years volunteering in the community, and those kids on his little league team could come back and meet with you and tell stories that you've never heard of and pay your respects, and um, you know, paint the picture for him.
yeah.
And it's not rocket science in a lot of ways, but we just have to have the courage to do it. And for some reason, some doctors are afraid to have courage sometimes.
I mean, you can't put a price on that stuff. And what the
Mhm.
things you're describing are super valuable to anybody who's lost a loved one or served a family who has. And so I love the way you articulated that. And I'm thinking back to, obviously Blockbuster, the video space is much, much different than the funeral space, but still there's some lessons to be learned. And I just think about, they were probably addicted to all those late fees. I mean, I was one
Yes.
of them. You go in there on a Friday night and it was supposed to be due back Saturday, but something came up. And so it's Monday at lunch and you're dropping them by and you get the late fee. Well, and I don't know if that happened, how in their executive decisions or not, but I'm thinking they got comfortable with that cash
No,
flow and that value that they didn't want to do anything about it. Like they failed to listen to the customers, or maybe they listened to them, but they never did anything about it.
right. Yeah.
And so that's a
What else,
lesson that we can
what
learn
else are
in
you gonna
funeral.
do? Who else are you
Yeah,
gonna go to? It is what it is, right? It's
they did have a monopoly in a lot of ways.
yeah. It's like if you're an insurance company in Florida, like what, you're gonna go to another company? Good luck. Self-insure. Is this I think there's that arrogance sometimes that comes into play. And I think I know myself, and I think you'd probably say the same thing. I'm sure there's people you do business with where you just see like a genuine humility and a care for the customer doing the right thing. I mean, how many people say my mechanic, and again, and funeral service is a similar way. Like people stereotype, well, no one likes their funeral director, no one likes their mechanic. No, well, guess what? I know a lot of people who do. Like they may not, they may think overall they have issues with a class of employee, employment, but I trust my guy. Like, oh, Bobby, he didn't even charge me. Or he, I walked in and I thought it was gonna be $2,000. It was only $180, and he waived the whatever. I mean, I think those are the best funeral directors and the firms that last the longest is when you keep your priority on taking care of the family. And if you do that, they'll take care of you in the long run.
Yeah, and I mean, other than listening to your families and educating your families, what other advice could you give to independent funeral homes about staying relevant these days?
I mean, R&D, rip off and
Yeah,
duplicate, you know? I
that's right.
mean, it's, you don't have to invent it. Every good idea we have implemented has definitely not come from me.
No.
Some, I fancy myself an idea guy, some have, but a lot I've taken from other people. And keep your eyes open and recognize there's a whole big world outside of just your county association or your state association.
Yeah.
Read something, subscribe to the magazines, go online, you know, see what people are doing. Uh,
Subscribe to a podcast.
a podcast or
That
two,
that can't help.
you
That
have to,
can't help but
yeah.
hurt.
And that's the thing. I mean, how and I it's been remarkable. The last episode of the Graveyard Shift available at pissarri.com/graveyard shift. The last time we were
Exactly right.
talking,
Shameless
our
plug.
our I'm contractually obligated to say the name 3 times, otherwise I lose my year-end bonus. Um, we were talking to the last episode, Todd, who moderates and tries to corrals us, and was saying that he was visiting with a funeral director who said that they played one of our episodes for their entire staff to listen to. And I was like, wow, I was just talking to a funeral director here in New England who said that, he and his wife were in the car listening to an episode on a road trip. And she's like, you have to have your team listen to that episode. And there's, little things that we could take away from them as ideas where we recognize that, the problems at our firm aren't unique to us, and the struggles are not only ours. It's profession wide, and it doesn't matter your region or your demographic or any of that. Like we all struggle with operations. We all struggle with burnout. We all struggle with recruiting. We all struggle with, contemporary family expectations. We all struggle with technology mashing with each other. And you listen to a podcast and it's a subject that week, and you find something that hopefully you take away and you implement it in your business, and it makes it 1% easier. And
Yeah,
if you
but the
do that
implication there is that
52
you
weeks a year, it's
yeah,
52% better, you know?
much better. Good suggestion there, but, the implication there is that the funeral home owner, the business owner, takes time to step out of their business to work on their business in some way, right? Whether it's reading a book or going to a convention or conference or a podcast or what have you. But, I think the tendency is to be in your business all the time, doing the things that
Mhm.
only you can really do. But there's
Yeah.
consequences for that.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And I know I've struggled with that over the course of time, and others have as well. Just my co-host Jimmy Lucas and I were talking yesterday, and we were um, discussing that element of our own journeys. And like we're
Mhm.
both undertakers kids. I mean, we did not go to school for this. Like we went to school for mortuary science. He went to school and studied social work. I went and studied politics. And then we come back and we find ourselves in a position where you have employees and you've got P&L statements and you've got marketing budgets and you've got, cost of goods sold and year over year, average cost per call ratios and all of that. And all of a sudden, no one ever taught me that. Like how could I have bounced a check? I still have checks in the checkbook. It's not how it works. Um, so like taking the time to step back is a hard thing, and for me, it's really hard because I really love being a funeral director. I mean,
Yeah.
there are days where I'm just like, why? What did I do? Like, why did I grow this company? I much prefer to sit with the family. I much prefer to, walk with them on the journey and attend the funeral and guide them and be there for them. That's a lot more fun than sitting and looking at spreadsheets. So, we get busy and I'm like, all right, the spreadsheet will be there. The next thing you know, it's 11 o'clock at night and you have to do it still because you just do the next day. And then you went to do a transfer and help in a service and sit with the family and all that. So it is a
Yeah, but it's
challenge.
good to see it. It's good to see where that good work shows up on the financial statement at some point. And so that makes me think about, businesses all have their different key performance indicators and such. And are there any that you look towards on a regular basis that should be top of mind for funeral home owners on the podcast?
For me, Fundamentally, it comes down to our surveys. I I think everything else will track along with that. I think if you have a strong net promoter score from your client families, that will impact, hopefully, ultimately your call volume. It'll impact, hopefully, ultimately the bottom line of financial statements, the satisfaction of your team as well. I do believe that happy families will lead to happy funeral directors in a lot of ways. John Horan, in Colorado, we quote him all the time where he says funeral directors work for hugs, and I think that's true. I mean, a lot of us feel called to this profession as a service, and when the family walks up to you at the graveside and says, "I never could have done this without you," and they just put their arms around you the next time they see you at the grocery store. I mean, it's you can't get that, and you don't get it in other places. I don't remember if it was Todd Van Beck or who it was, but someone once said how like their doctor discovered cancer, and they were okay because it was discovered so early, and they were like, "I didn't even send them a thank you note." And as a funeral director, I get thank you notes all the time. Like, in a world where people don't send thank you notes, funeral directors still get them from their families because of and if that doesn't show the power of what we do and the impact on people and the meaning behind it, I don't know what else would.
Yeah, the thank you notes and the hugs and all those things are important, and thankfully you get a lot of them. That's good stuff. Well, I was thinking about what drives some of those metrics, and obviously net promoter score. I don't know how many funeral homes actually use that or some semblance of that,
Hmm.
but I think getting that feedback is super important, and then translating that, I guess, ultimately into either market share or the profitability of your funeral home or the value of your business at the end of the day. So hopefully those things will be improved over the course of time just by keeping track on your families.
And everything funnels into it. I mean, you look at a survey to a family, and ultimately, that's the final question: would you recommend us? But if you're the director, and all the directors get their surveys, back. Um, but if you're seeing like the cleanliness of facilities and property, and if that score was a 4 out of 5, um, well, then maybe the next time I'm walking in the parking lot and I see a cup in the corner, I'm going to walk over and pick it up and throw it away because I saw that it went down. So I think it all connects in that way.
It does. I mean, that'll help change behavior. That's what we have to change for all of us. And I think that's important to get that feedback. All right. So you're obviously a big advocate for Celebrant training. And I don't know if everyone is familiar with what that is or what it's involved and why you got into that. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Sure. So, a lot of folks who've been in the profession for a long time would know likely the name Doug Manning. He was a former Baptist preacher from Texas and Oklahoma who really he left active church ministry to focus on grief work and do works with people in grief. He put some of the first grief groups together in the country and wrote a lot on the subject. And he worked a lot with the Dodge Company, had an ongoing column for them, and would do some speaking and talking and stuff. And he was traveling and went to Australia and New Zealand, doing some presentations and talking there. And when he was there, he encountered these people that kept calling themselves funeral celebrants. And he said, "Well, what is that? What does that mean?" And they were kind of like a justice of the peace in the United States, but they were sanctioned by the government, and they were people who were officiating funerals because Australia, New Zealand, they're kind of high Anglican, part of the Commonwealth. Church of England type people, and it wasn't speaking to a lot of the people in the country, and they were, moving away from it, and they were going to these celebrant folks to do their weddings and things like that. And then when they were having deaths, they were saying, "Well, you did a nice job at the wedding. How about the funeral?" And he said, "This is something." This is probably the early '90s, and we started to see cremation really starting to rise and direct disposition starting to rise, and he was really concerned about that in the United States, and he said, "I think this is something that we'd benefit from in the United States." So he came home and was having conversations with his daughter Glenda and the team at Insight Books, and they went to the associations, they went to some of the big companies, and were trying to promote the idea, and everyone was like, "Yeah, nice idea, whatever."
That'll never work
Um,
here.
yeah. So then eventually they're like, "Well, let's just do it ourselves." So they went to Mount Ida College in Massachusetts when it was still Mountain out of college, and had a group of 50 people together. They sent out some brochures from Dodge, and they got in a room, and they basically had a round table and defined what a celebrant would be in the United States. And in their mind, they said it's a coming together to create personalized services that meet the needs of families. And I think some people have a misperception of what celebrants are. Some people think it has to be 100% secular. That's not true. Some people think, it's got it just for like, the perfect atheist, Wiccan, what made up whatever situation, and it's not. It really could work for anyone. So what a celebrant does is a person who takes a training, and the one that I help with, it's a 3-day training, and they learn about grief. They learn about what people in grief need. They learn about how it is you meet with a family and people who've experienced a loss to gather the stories and collect them and help put together a service that's unique and tells the story of the person's life. It incorporates the elements that they'd be comfortable with and what they want. So if there's some ceremony, if there's some music, if there's some poetry, if there's some prayer, if there's some scripture, if there's some, whatever it is, and we put it together. And it's a great tool for families that are looking for something different. And for a long time in funeral service, I think a lot of us, we had Reverend Rolodex that we would call
Yep.
upon. So the family would come in and say, well, I don't know who I want. And we'd be like, I got a guy.
Like,
Don't worry. I got a guy. He does a pretty good job. And we often say, like, would you want a pretty good embalmer? Like, do you really want someone just does a pretty good job? And
yeah.
like, because if it's still a cookie cutter service where they open it up and they insert the name here, that's not what people are looking for. But if they have something that's meaningful and special about their loved one, that speaks to people. And I've had numerous times over the course of years where families have moved from direct disposition to having either a funeral or memorial service because we've explained that as an option. And I've had numerous people over the years who came up to me after seeing a celebrant-led service who had prearranged their own direct disposition and said, I never even knew something like that was possible. That's what I want when I go. Could we change my plans? And we've done it that way too. So there's some information online. I'm a firm believer, even if I believe that everyone that works in funeral service, even if you're not going to function as a celebrant, would benefit from attending the training because it just helps you, again, adding to your toolbox,
Yeah.
helping you with the language of how you describe these things, giving you an understanding. I've worked with, vendors who come to celebrant training and they say, I understand my funeral director clients better now because I see more about what it is they do with families as a result of it. So.
Now, one of the things I was thinking about was, with the celebrants, do you find that they are working more in affiliation with a funeral home, or are they working outside of the funeral home, or sometimes but
Great question.
either?
Yeah, yeah. It depends. Normally, it
Yeah.
depends on who paid for the training.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, if a funeral director sent someone to the training, their expectation typically is that person's going to be a staff member on their team, serving their families. Glenda Stansberry, who's our lead trainer, Doug's daughter, she is an independent contractor. So she's in Oklahoma City and she works with a dozen funeral homes on a regular basis who call her up for things. So it really depends on the circumstances and
And
whatever works best for the firm.
it makes me wonder how popular or how pervasive this is in the United States. So would you say it's 50% of funerals have a celebrant, or
No,
what percentage do you think?
no, it's still. I mean, even as we introduced this conversation, you talked about how some people may not know about it. So
Yeah.
Celebrant's been around for 20 years. It's been in a publication every other month for 20 years. If someone and people still don't even know what it is. So, I would say when we see it grow, it grows in markets, and it grows in markets where people do it and use it,
Yeah.
because the people in that community begin to see it. And Glenda jokes around. There's a little community in Oklahoma that is very rural. She says there's a church on every single corner. She's like, it is the buckle of the Bible Belt. And funeral director there was like, oh, Glenda, I'll never be able to use you. And then she started doing some services for him, and then everyone would be like, we want the blonde lady from Oklahoma City. And it didn't mean that they weren't doing stuff with the church, but they would say, the church service is going to be the church service, and the pastor has an order of service, and it's meaningful to mom and to
Mhm.
grandpa and whatnot. But we still want to have the opportunity to have that life celebration, something more contemporary. Could we do that as well? Could we do it before? Could we do it after? And the answer is yes.
I really like this because it really helps out with the changing funeral consumer. And, as a funeral home owner, they don't have to feel threatened by celebrants. I mean, they could embrace the concepts, go to the class, become trained, and read some books on it, study it, and then incorporate that in their business. And that might be something new they can do in 2026.
Yeah, and I will say from the the insight model of training, I can't speak for all of them. I haven't been to others, but from our model, Doug was very intentional that the funeral director is at the center of it. We were never training celebrants to be a direct to consumer person. Most celebrants I know do not want to be direct consumer. If the family reaches out to them directly, they say, "Well, which funeral home are you working with?" And explaining the importance and value of having that person there. And they say, "Well, on the day of their service, it would be nice if I could be the officiant and you could be the family and the funeral director could be the funeral director. So you're not looking to me to be the funeral director for you and you don't have to do it yourself." Um, but for sure, it's definitely something that I think benefits it. A funeral director who is a celebrant is a better arranger. I think they're better at first call. I think they're better at cremation ID viewings. I think they're better at releasing of cremains. I mean, there's
Yeah.
skills that come throughout it, or we see how we could incorporate meaning and ceremony that change the way people operate for the better.
Where are you seeing technology incorporate with the celebrant concept? Are they interlocked at some point?
I think, well, the biggest thing, well, I don't know. That's a good question. One area, and some of it's kind of low grade, like it's not
Mhm.
anything remarkable, but the ability to have Spotify and a Bluetooth speaker. I mean, something as
Yeah.
simple as that. How many families I've had come up to me and say, "I've never heard music at the graveside before." I mean, you
Wow.
could actually just incorporate a song, or if you're gonna have the flower placement, it's on our checklist. We have a Bluetooth speaker in every vehicle for every graveside service. Fill the background, put it
Yeah.
out there for some time. So that's one way. Live streaming is really, I think, an underutilized tool in our profession. We
Oh,
we
yeah.
got better at it during COVID, and we learned about it. And I think somehow we stopped talking about it. I was talking to someone from the Verton Group recently, which is you're probably familiar with them, but for our
Yeah.
listeners, it's a collection of they're independent, but a regional consolidator. And they were saying that their numbers show on live streams, on average, it's about like 90 to 100 people that are watching the stream, either live or recorded. And most will watch it after the recording. Now, if you look at your average funeral, how many people come in for an average funeral? Is it 50? Is it 75? Is it 100? You could essentially double the eyes on the services that you're offering. And if you do a good job, and if it's like a celebrant service that's meaningful and touches people and they want to see it, you just got your funeral home double the exposure because you offered the streaming to the family. So
Yeah.
that's a way that I think that technology and it could link together for the
No,
firm
those
for
are so good. And
greatly.
and like you said, they didn't have to be, cutting edge technology per se, but, just being innovative and just being creative, um, creates more value for those families.
I did a service a few years ago. It was a woman, her attorney was her conservator. He came in, did her advanced planning. All he knew about her was her name and her date of birth, and that she used to have a roommate at a trailer home before she moved into an assisted living facility. And that's really all he knew about her. And the roommate was gone. So we couldn't get any more information. And she died. And he wanted it all done the right way. We did a graveside. And I wrote a service using her name and her date of birth,
Mm.
and that I kind of went with the theme of how her life, for us at least, was a bit of a mystery. But we recorded it, and it was on the obit page. And about a year later, I got a phone call from her nephew, who would check in with her about once a year because she was kind of a recluse, and that's how he found out she was gone, because he went to do his check in. He found her obituary, he Googled it, and he was like, "Thank you for doing that service for her." He's like, "It means a lot to me to know that." He goes, "You know what? She like wouldn't really talk to my mom. She would talk to me once a year. Like we just did our best, but." And he goes, "You're right. Her life was a mystery." He goes, "Even as her family, she was just whatever. But because we had embraced the technology to record it, when the family finally did appear a year later, they were able to have some sense of closure and participation in knowing she was laid to rest the right way." Um,
Yeah, what a
and
great story, and in the old paradigm, that really wasn't even possible.
Mhm.
So now we have all these options to contemplate and share with families. That's a really good story. And I'm always amazed about how many families view the on-demand version of live streams. I mean, because they want to, they don't recall everything that
Right.
happened during the service because they were in a fog of grief, right?
Yeah.
So they don't know who was there and or uh, what was said and those kinds of things. So you go back and watch it over and over again, especially if they were close to you.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, who's a funeral director, his mom passed away last year, and that was one of his takeaways. He said, he goes, I didn't stream it because I like everyone's going to be there. I was like, no one's going to be missing. And he goes, looking back at it, I wish we did so I'd have the access to it. And now he shares that information with families, and he lets them know that has
Bingo.
someone that
Well,
went through it.
that's part of the value we create is not the stuff necessarily that we do in the funeral profession, but it's the mistakes we help families prevent,
Right.
right? So you share the story with someone and then they won't make the same mistake because they learn from you, and that's valuable.
Hmm. For
So
sure.
I love that. Good ideas. All right, good deal. Let's talk about some other funeral trends I guess you're seeing in the markets in the marketplace. Anything come to mind as far as new trends or anything that piqued your curiosity lately?
Oh, good question. The one thing I guess that's I found interesting is the folks at Chapter with the video obituary notices. I've been saying for a long time that I think the print publication obituary it's on life support if it's not dead.
Yeah,
A
definitely. It's
number
dying now.
number of years ago, I sat with the editor of our local paper before they sold to a larger conglomerate, and we were having coffee, and I was I thought, they were fighting to, I thought, stay independent. And I was like, you need to revolutionize the obituary. You need to change the way we look at it in this country. Like, you should be the paper that makes it a half page and add color photos and you just got to do something different because people don't see the value for what you're charging for what they're getting. And to her credit, I think she agreed with me. I think she thought I was right, but she sold the paper. So, but I've been, we just see it all the time. You ask anyone in the arrangement room, families are, how it costs how much? Are you kidding me? Put it on the
Yeah.
website. We'll put it on Facebook. We'll put it on whatever. Um, so these folks are looking at doing it a little differently, and they're putting it on broadcast, and it's a photo and basic information and information, the funeral home's tribute page and stuff like that. It's years ago we had the death crier with the bell that would walk around the village and announce a death. We had a period of time where there was morning and afternoon newspapers, and that was the most relevant. Again, times are changing, so maybe the next thing is the video obituary.
Yeah, that's a really good example. Something I really haven't thought about, but what's the saying? If you don't like change, you'll like irrelevance even
Yeah.
less. And I mean and it reminds me of that because the obituaries has been around for a long time, the newspaper ones, but they are relevant now
Right.
in a lot of ways.
And it's not
And
change for change's sake, right? Like, it's not like, let's just change because we can. It's trying to be responsive and recognizing what people want, and
yeah, well, they see that there's no value in paying thousands of dollars for a newspaper obituary that no one's going to see or a
and they
few
go around
people.
the table, there's 4 kids, and you're like, "Are we gonna do an obit?" And then they're like, "Well, who gets the paper?" And not a single person raises their hand. And the one
Yeah.
that does raise their hand reads it online. So, I mean,
Yep.
we see more people, I think. The number of subscribers to our funeral home obit notification system is, 8 times what it was 3 years ago, probably, because people are just used to it. So,
What a great idea. What a great idea. All right, well, good deal. Let's transition here a little bit to because we're talking about secrets of running a funeral business, right? I don't know if it's so secret or not, but what's one secret maybe you wish every funeral home owner might be aware of for their business?
hmm, that was a good question. So good, you stumped me.
I'm not used to stumping
No,
people.
I'm not. No, well, I don't. I don't think there are secrets, really. I mean, I think I would say we have to remember little things matter. Uh, Stick to the basics. Every so often, stop and review. And what did we used to do that we stopped doing because it was a pain in the neck? But in the words of Mark Krause, if it's a pain in the neck, we probably should be doing it for our families. That's the telltale sign that it's something we should be doing.
Yeah.
Um, And how could I make little deals is little things big, it's a big deal if we make it a big deal is, the line that, I've heard before. So
Oh, I like that a lot.
it's, someone's coming in to pick up mom's cremains, and how do we handle that? Is it a secretary has them in a bag and they sign a piece of paper and then we hand them over like they're going through the McDonald's drive-through? Would you like fries with that? Or are we putting them out in a special place? Are we lighting candles and putting flowers around it and playing music and laying things out in such a way and doing it ceremonial? Maybe even saying words along with it and having something special for the family so they see that it's meaningful. That's a 5-minute setup and a 5-minute release, so it adds 10 minutes to the process. But if they've driven by 13 billboards on the way to your funeral home advertising a discount cremation and they saw those, how are you differentiating yourselves? So make it a big deal, make it special. How do we do that on the phone? How do we do it at first call? How do we do it at the arrangement conference? How do we do it on the first viewing? How do we do it when they're for everything? I mean, I think little details are the things that set us apart from other parts of life. And we are in a world with increasingly terrible customer service. So if we offer really good customer service, it sticks out even more than it used to 5 years ago because people are just not used to it. So
Yeah, it'll be so refreshing. I mean, I guess that's a not so secret tips there, but great tips. And
Mhm.
you mentioned starting some new things, but at the same time, you're stopping some existing things. So my opinion is every business should have a stop doing list because there's some things that don't make sense and are actually harmful to the value you create for your customers.
Mhm.
I mean, the purpose of a business is to create a customer and retain a customer, right? And
Right.
create value for the customer. And anything you're doing that's not adding to those three things, then you should probably stop doing it.
I like that. No, that's a great idea. Because they're distractions from the right stuff. We all have so much bandwidth and so much time. Everyone wishes there were more hours in a day, and if we're wasting 45 minutes in our time on something we should stop doing, that gives us 45 minutes to do something else better. So,
Yes, it does. Well, Matt, I think we've come to a conclusion of our time here today. I just can't thank you enough for being on, but more importantly, thank you for your leadership in the funeral profession and all the good work you're doing at your funeral home for families in your community and really all over the nation because people are seeing your name and learning from you. So thank you for that.
I've enjoyed my time, and as always, I've learned something here too. So
Wait,
thanks
you
for
forgot to mention Pasari, the graveyard shift.
Did I?
Don't,
That's right. I only did it 2 times, so there goes the bonus. So
I
maybe
want you to get your bonus.
upcoming season 2, we might have a new third guest there if they drop me. I was advocating, I guess our most viral clip that was when we were walking around at the NFDA convention. They said is over 100,000 or whatever views on it. But in there, I was advocating us throwing Gary off the show and getting Bodie, the therapy dog from Milwaukee, to join instead. That was the cutest
Yeah,
puppy in the world. So
booted
maybe
by the puppy.
maybe I'll get dropped now, and Bodie will be there. But
Never, never. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Director's Playbook. If today's conversation was helpful to you, feel free to like and subscribe. And also, you can share any feedback you may have at thedirectorsplaybook@funeraldirectorslife.com. Until next time, take care, everybody.